Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi al-Qa'il. Ala la'natullahi ala al-Zalimin. والحمد لله القائل إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To Allah we are from, and to Him is our return. We at CARE Michigan, we are holding this Remembering Imam Luqman presentation, in which today marks the 12th year in which Imam Luqman Abdullah, may God's mercy be upon his soul, was killed by the FBI. And we want to go over some of the facts of this particular case. Number one, to keep it fresh in our minds, to keep the memory of Imam Luqman and his work and his dawah alive in the memories of our community. And as Malcolm X said, may God's mercy be upon him. Of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. So we need to understand the history of our community. Number two is, and with my colleague that I have with me, Sister Mariam Abu Ali, she will be going over some of the contemporary implications in pertaining to FBI tactics, surveillance, the issues of entrapment that relate to Imam Luqman's case, but what we have to deal with its community now. And by the way, Sister Mariam, I think this is her first time online with us or in a community event. She is she manages our cases, our civil rights cases at the Michigan chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations. So you all can say salam to Sister Mariam. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum. Thank you for having me.
Alhamdulillah. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take Sister Mariam off and put up a PowerPoint presentation and to try to go over some of the facts of the case in regards to Imam Luqman. And then I will bring Sister Mariam on if there are any questions or comments that would like to be posed at the very end. And those can be posed in regards to this case. So with that, let me begin with the PowerPoint presentation part. Bismillah. So in this picture we have right here, and I will get to explain it more in regards to the issue of informants that were involved in the case of Imam Luqman. That person that you see looking at Imam Luqman with the white kufi, with the black trench coat, with the tattoo, that was actually one of the three confidential informants, according to the criminal affidavit, that infiltrated the masjid which Imam Luqman was at. His name is Jibril, or he went by the name of Jibril. We don't know what his real name is, but this is one of the FBI confidential informants. Before going to the slides, let me give you a little background about Imam Luqman, who was raised in Alabama, came to the city of Detroit. He became the Imam of Masjid Haq, which is in the west side of Detroit. It was first on Joy Road area west of Linwood, not that far away from Masjid Wali Muhammad, and then moved to Claremont, which of course is also not that far away from that area, from that neighborhood. Imam Luqman was known in the community and amongst his followers, and even people in the community who did not follow him, who were not Muslim, as a man who was charitable. Besides being the imam, and he didn't take any salary, he actually would drive a cab, and he would, in his route, he would make sure that he was back at the masjid to lead the prayers. So he basically would be there almost for all of the 5 daily prayers. He would be at the masjid and he would give people money out of his pocket. He was dedicated to helping returning citizens, many people who were leaving incarceration. He would help them find places to stay. Many times he opened up the masjid, the sanctuary, the musalla, for people to sleep who were homeless. He fed people, not just in the Muslim community or returning citizens, but also in the broader community, in which food boxes, a soup kitchen every Sunday, and the legacy of Imam Luqman, even though the community is not a community of great means like some other masajid that are in Metro Detroit, in which people are quite wealthy, um, earning six figures, seven figures in certain suburban areas. Nonetheless, of this community being of meager means, has been feeding people and taking care of the needs of the people in this neighborhood in Detroit, and one of the poorest zip codes in the United States of America, and America's blackest city, Detroit, which is also America's poorest major city in the United States of America. Now, in regards to Imam Luqman, and we'll get to this. And I'm going to have some slides up in regards to factual background and certain things that relate to the case. But before reading some of these points regarding the factual background, and this is uh, based upon what you're reading right now, is based upon a uh, a civil suit that we filed against the FBI in regards to our claim that the FBI committed fraud and wrongful death in killing Imam Luqman. But let me give you a little background in regards, before we get to reading this, of the actual incident that led to his homicide. So Imam Luqman's masjid was infiltrated by at least three confidential informants. The outward reason why the FBI claimed that they were infiltrating his masjid is that they claimed they were looking for extremist activity or terroristic activity. And they actually made the claim that his humble mosque was trying to establish Sharia, uh, Sharia in the city of Detroit. So this is the claim that was made by the FBI. What then took place is that with the confidential informant, and this is public information that's come out, and you can look it up, and I can share with you some more resources. Uh, One of it's that the confidential informant came to the imam and was trying to incite the imam of the community to attack the Super Bowl. If you remember back, I think it was in 2007 or 2008, actually the Super Bowl was held here in the city of Detroit at the newly established Ford Field. And the informant said, that we could blow up this and attack these disbelievers, these non-believers. And actually, Imam Luqman was like, no, we can't do anything like that. That's forbidden. It's against the teachings of Islam to actually attack innocent people, to attack civilians, irrespective of their religious background or their race. This is un-Islamic. So then what the FBI did, I call it that they tried to get a constellation prize. So the constellation prize means this, that that another confidential informant, and this white guy by the name of Jabril, he passed himself off as being a man who ran a business, a small business in which there were goods transported from his place as him being a wholesaler to other small businesses. So there was in the city of Detroit, uh, just off of Michigan Avenue in East Dearborn, there's a commercial warehouse that was there. Actually had Mack trucks coming in and out, all of the commercial um, equipment that you would see inside of a warehouse, like forklifts and things like this. What he did was he offered some people in the congregation jobs to move things and to give them cash. Now we had to keep in mind that a number of people in the congregation are struggling themselves financially or having problems getting jobs as returning citizens. So they had people come to the warehouse to move things. So the FBI then charged some of the people in regards to this with conspiracy to sell stolen goods or to move stolen goods. But of course, none of these goods were stolen because the commercial warehouse was rented by the FBI. All of the goods, flat screen TVs, computer equipment that was being moved was all paid for with taxpayer dollars. We're talking about uh, over seven figures. We're talking about over $1 million that the FBI waste in this project that carried on for about 3 years. And on that fateful day, on October 28th, Imam Luqman actually, who normally did not go to this warehouse, um, gave this individual by the name of Jabril a ride to the warehouse. And so the guy Jabril asked if the Imam could take him to the warehouse. The Imam drove Jabril to the warehouse. There were three other brothers who were in there. And then this guy, Jabril, who went by Jabril, excused himself. And then a multi jurisdictional task force then came into the warehouse, led by a special technical squad by the FBI that was flown in from Quantico, which is in Northern Virginia. If you know anything about Quantico, it's the training base of the FBI. It's also the boot camp for the United States Marine Corps and technical shooters, snipers, people who are trained in combat are trained there at Quantico base. So this special team was flown in. You have the FBI, Immigration Custom Enforcement, the Detroit Police, the Dearborn Police, the Michigan State Police, Border Patrol. There's even one Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer. I don't know why there was a Canadian officer part of this. You had uh, attack dogs, canine dogs. They had helicopters. They came into the warehouse with the actual shooters of the tactical team. They let off percussion grenades. Came in with their assault weapons, their AR-15s. Told everyone to get on the ground. The Imam gets on the ground. The FBI then releases its its canine, its attack dog. Then the FBI claims that the Imam had a gun, pulled out a gun, and shot the dog. And then they claim since the dog is a law enforcement officer, they then use this as a predicate to claim that this gave them license to shoot the Imam since they shot a law enforcement agent. They said so-called Freddy the dog, and then they shot him 20 times when he was on the ground. They shot him um, in the groin. They shot him in the back, and as the Imam is down upon the ground, and as we moved over, and you can see some of the slides about Frey the dog. Um, the Imam is handcuffed, and as he's bleeding, the FBI used their helicopter. Instead of taking the Imam to the hospital, they took the dog to to a veterinary hospital in Warren, and then the Imam died. or we can say he became Shaheed. We could say maybe that's a better word. What we then later found out after further investigation, uh, starting after this, I actually when they released his body, I went to the funeral home in which his ghusl, in which the ritual washing was made, and you could see the uh, the bite marks in his face. So the dog mauled Imam Luqman um, on his face and his arm. And what we later found out through the investigation, and this was very brutal what this dog did. As you can see, his jaw was broken. Um, the dog literally bit into his face, and we got the autopsy photos as well. What we later found out was that Imam Luqman, um, during his autopsy, and they do a number of things. There is no forensic evidence that ties Imam Luqman to ever having a gun, right? So there's no paraffin test results that say that the Imam had any gunpowder on his hands. Given he was shot 20 times, the so-called gun that they said he had, there was no blood or any of his DNA on that. And also with the forensic uh, tests that were done on the bullet that went into Freddie the dog, that uh, there is not proof or evidence that that caliber gun that went into Freddie the dog actually matched the so-called weapon. So what we're saying is that the FBI shot their own dog when they shot Imam Luqman after the dog had been attacking him. There is no forensic evidence uh, that links Imam Luqman to that gun. Now you might say, why did they kill Imam Luqman? Like, who was Imam Luqman to have been killed by the FBI, or why was he investigated to begin with? If and why did this go through if there was no terrorism related charges? So there's two things. Number one, in the actual training of these people and the actual briefing of the technical team, it was framed that Imam Luqman was some sort of radical Muslim extremist, that he was potentially a terrorist. So these officers in this special technical team went into the warehouse as if they were facing a terrorist, as if they were facing someone like Osama bin Laden or someone like this. So they went into the mindset with this technical team. It's literally called the Joint Terrorism Task Force. They literally went into the warehouse as if they were going face to face with actual terrorists, right? Now, the other reason regarding the targeting of Imam Luqman is this, and this is according to the criminal affidavit that was released by the FBI and the Department of Justice. They mentioned more than one time in this criminal affidavit that Imam Luqman had ties to a so-called black radical by the name of Imam Jamil El-Amin, also known as H. Rap Brown, who was a leader during the Black Power movement, part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee known as SNCC, and who had been targeted by the Federal Bureau of Investigations since the counterintelligence program of J. Edgar Hoover. And Imam Jamil, um, who's fighting a wrongful conviction right now, had been in prison since the year 2000, 2001. So we're talking about 7, 8 years since Imam Jamil was in prison for a bogus conviction for uh, allegedly killing a police officer. right? Which, of course, there's that of itself, and that whole case needs its own particular session to talk about the particulars of that. But Imam Luqman was very close with Imam Jamil's family, and he was going through the community raising money. He's giving sermons at different mosques and when people raise money within the community, fighting for Imam Jamil's case and for his wrongful conviction. So we see a direct connection between Imam Luqman, the criminal affidavit, why his Jama'ah, his congregation, was targeted, why he was targeted. There's a direct relationship back to the FBI's old beef and old connection to Imam Jamil El-Amin that dates all the way back to COINTELPRO with J. Edgar Hoover, that criminal who the FBI's headquarters in Washington D.C. is named after, right? Now, in regards to the tactical team that day, let me also mention this. In regards to the killing of Imam Luqman, the only people who said that Imam Luqman had a gun were actually the 5 people who shot him, or the 5 people who were part of the team who were in there. Okay. The Dearborn police themselves were not allowed into the warehouse until an hour after Imam Luqman was killed. By that time, the special technical team left and they were whisked out of town without being questioned by the police and were whisked back to Washington, D.C. And they supposedly took the gun with them. So there was no gun when the Dearborn Police Department and the rest of the officers came on the scene. They themselves were blocked from investigating the scene for about an hour, right? So the only people who said that Imam Luqman had a gun or saw him with a gun allegedly were the people who actually shot him, okay? Now, the other brothers who were there, one of them actually saw the Imam being shot, Brother Abdul Salam, and this is all in our lawsuit, right? Um, he said the Imam had no gun. Right now, when we asked for a special investigation by the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, led by at the time Tom Perez, who now is the chair of the Democratic National Convention, they did a speedy and hasty investigation and closed it, and they only took the statements from the FBI hit squad. Now, they tried to question, or they claimed that they wanted to question or wanted to get the other side of the people in the warehouse, but they refused to speak. Well, the reason why they didn't speak to the DOJ at the time, the Special Civil Rights Investigation Unit, was 2 reasons. Number one, they had pending cases. So under attorney advice, they weren't going to speak about that particular case until or what took place until they were wrapped up their legal issues. Number one. Number two, talking to the DOJ is not truly an independent entity because the DOJ, the entity that was investigating this case, was the same entity that was prosecuting these individuals. They were the same ones that signed off in regards to the criminal affidavit against Imam Luqman, against the brother. So it's kind of like an issue of trying to get the fox to investigate the wolf about who ate the chickens, right? So we were able to get signed affidavits only after the criminal issue had been worked out, and the brothers were able to get past their particular cases. But by that time, the at the time the Michigan Attorney General Mike Cox had closed his so-called investigation, and Tom Perez at Department of Justice Civil Rights closed their so-called investigation. So, and this is Muhammad Abdul Salam that I mentioned. If you look at number 52, he was an eyewitness There also was another brother, Dietrich Driver, who we also knew as the community as Abdullah Beard. He was also um, um, charged at the time, and he was there at the warehouse while it took place as well. And just a couple of years ago, by the way, in October, he was killed in a very sketchy incident by the Detroit police that went into his home, like around 4 o'clock in the morning, and shot and killed him 20 times. And actually, his ghusl, or his ritual washing before a funeral, was done at the exact same funeral home as Imam Luqman. I actually happened to be at both, of a witness of Imam Luqman after he was shrouded, or when he was shrouded, and then I was actually there during the washing process of Abdullah Beard, also known as Dietrich Driver. So we sued the FBI in regards to wrongful death, and that this was a fraudulent case. Now, so we filed this lawsuit. What the FBI did was, when we tried to get the names of the shooters of the tactical team, when we filed the lawsuit, they refused to give the names, saying it was under national security, that they could not name the names of the actual shooters. Right. So we had to go back and amend our complaint after the FBI was covering up the names of these people. When we refiled the case to put in the names of the head of the FBI and the actual head of the tactical team, who wasn't one of the shooters, uh, then a judge said that we did not. The judge then says that we did not. Not the judge. The government then argued, well, we passed the statute of limitations for filing um, the lawsuit. So our lawsuit was not dismissed based upon any specifics of the case or what we were arguing. It was dismissed because they said that we went past the 3-year statute of limitations, in which the FBI was stalling us and would not give us names, so we had to amend our complaint. So unfortunately, the federal judge did not take that into consideration. We then appealed it to the appeals court in the 6th district, which then later we filed a case to the U.S. Supreme Court. Along with the two attorneys who led this up was, at that time, CARE Michigan staff attorney Lena Mussery, who's now the national litigation director at CARE National, and our co-counsel was attorney Sharif Akil, who is on CARE Michigan's legal advisory board right now, and one of the well-known attorneys in our community. He's actually representing some of the victims also who were tortured at Abu Ghraib by the U.S. military. So he's a top-notch attorney in our community. In conclusion, after we filed to the U.S. Supreme Court, it came back that the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear our case. So, in other words, the decision of the U.S. Court of Appeals 6th Circuit stood, that dismissed our lawsuit against the Federal Bureau of Investigations regarding the wrongful death of Imam Luqman. And as we called for 2 years ago, on the 10th anniversary of Imam Luqman's homicide, we renew those calls today. If the FBI claims they have nothing to hide, they claim everything was above board, then we have a number of pieces of information that we asked for from the government. So, okay, now we can't sue. That time has passed. For the sake of transparency, why doesn't the FBI and the Department of Justice release the information that we are looking for, that we asked for, specifics related to the case? And we have a number of questions. If they claim that they want to earn community trust, if they claim they have nothing to hide, then why won't they release the information that we asked for, that in regards to our claims in the wrongful death lawsuit, since we can't get any justice through the courts now because of the statute of limitations. So that is the issue. But we still, even though the court did not uphold or did not let us uh, proceed with the case regarding wrongful death, we still hold to this day that Imam Luqman was wrongfully targeted, in part because of his connection to Imam Jamil Al-Amin. We believe that Imam Luqman and his congregation was a victim of the flawed so-called war on terror policies that were started under President George Bush and escalated under the Obama administration. And by the way, Imam Luqman was killed during the Obama administration. This was ordered during the Obama administration. The DOJ and how they handled it, this was DOJ Obama folks, just to put that to be very clear. And we believe that um, Imam Luqman was wrongfully killed on October 20th, 2009. We still hold that there is no proof that he ever had a gun. In fact, we believe that he did not have a gun. And we believe that that FBI technical team, um, they took him out. And there are shades of what happened to Chairman Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party, who was killed in 1969. There are shades of what happened to Fred Hampton 40 years prior and what happened to Imam Luqman. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless Imam Luqman's family, to continue to give them sabr, patient perseverance, and to family members who are watching. I knew Imam Luqman personally, but to the family members who may be watching this, we believe and we remember to remind you that ultimately the Supreme Court is not in Washington, D.C. The Supreme Court is on Yom Qiyamah, on the day of resurrection and judgment. And those people who committed this, they will have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. And we ask Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill his promise that he says in the Quran, that on the day of judgment, that for those people who are killers on that day who have not repented, that they will be shielded and they will not be granted divine mercy upon that day. Allah na'atullahi al-dhalimeen, and we have faith in that. And I will now bring on my colleague, Sister Mariam, and she will, God willing, go through some of the things in terms of the contemporary relevance of this case. Why should Imam Luqman's case matter in regards to the broader issue of what Muslims face now? And then afterwards, I will come back on if there are any comments regarding the particulars of this case. We try to do our best to answer, and so we have about we'll try not to go any longer than 4 p.m. Eastern, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, or we may stop before then even.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Brother Dawood. As you said, I want to go over why Imam Luqman's case is pertinent and relevant to our times, although 12 years ago is actually not that long ago. The FBI has a long history of similar cases, dating back to well before, well before even the civil rights movement. But I want to talk about specifically the civil rights movement, just to start off with, and COINTELPRO. And so if you have not heard of COINTELPRO, I want you to look it up. So this was dating back to the 1950s to, sometime in the 1970s. You had, the FBI using illegal tactics to, infiltrate and surveil political parties, domestic political parties, particularly civil rights leaders, including Brother Martin Luther King and Brother Malcolm X. I'm sorry, let me just get my notes in order. But, you know, these tactics were used to silence, intimidate, and entrap political organizers who were fighting for our civil rights. And so, you know, the history of entrapment goes far back, but since 9/11, that was greatly expanded. And the FBI more than doubled its number of agents investigating terrorism. They tripled their budget to $3.3 billion. And, you know, things like the Patriot Act, of course, granted them a permissive legal environment in which they could use illegal tactics that are unconstitutional to create a system of mass surveillance and intimidation. As of now, I mean, this is at least what we know of. There are at least 15,000 informants, and I don't know, I could probably say the majority of them are tasked with infiltrating and surveilling the Muslim community. So in the past, informants were generally people who were caught up in the system. They were recruited after they had committed a crime. You know, it was usually some part of a plea bargain. But nowadays, the way the FBI goes about recruiting informants is through means of intimidation, threats of deportation, sometimes even, you know, threatening people with creating hurdles for their non-citizen family members coming from abroad, and of course, offering legal incentives. So if someone wants to get their green card or become a citizen or overcome some legal obstacle that they are already in, then that's one way that they recruit informants. And then, of course, there are huge cash incentives. I mean, informants can be paid more than six-figure salaries. And it's sometimes even works based on commission where, you know, if they're successful, they get like some lump sum monetary prize for you know, entrapping vulnerable members of our community. So, you know, informants themselves, they go through extraordinary measures to persuade people to get caught up in their, you know, fake terrorism plots. So they will also they'll target people who are vulnerable, including, you know, impressionable youth, people who are poor, people who are desperate, and a big target is actually people who are mentally ill, unfortunately. So, you know, as I said, that, you know, sadly, the people who are most vulnerable in our community are the ones being targeted. So, you know, I guess I want to give a few examples of entrapment cases. So for example, you have the case of the Newburgh Four, who in 2009 were jailed for, or arrested and imprisoned for a fake plot to shoot down military airplanes. And they were offered, you know, the primary person was offered $250,000. They were offered expensive cars. Oftentimes they're offered drugs and alcohol. And in another case, in Cleveland, they were given like this constant stream of booze and alcohol and drugs. And so oftentimes the conversations that were recorded were while they were under the influence. In the case of the Fort Dix Five in New Jersey, that was another case of entrapment. And that was at the time when Chris Christie was U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, and he actually, he used that case to launch his political career, and he used it to champion himself as tough on terror, and it propelled him to get elected as the governor of New Jersey. I also, I mentioned the case of the Newburgh Four. I want to read to you a quote from the judge during that trial. So one of the guys, his name was James Cromedy. And, they were prosecuted for plotting to bomb a synagogue and shoot down military airplanes. So the U.S. District Judge, McMahon, she believed, very clearly in her quote, that this person had no ability to actually carry out a terrorist act. And she says she believes that he would not, and I quote, would not have had the slightest idea how to make a terrorist attack happen. She says, I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that there would have been no crime here except the government instigated it, planned it, and brought it to fruition. So despite her statements, she still sentenced him to 25 years in prison. In another case in Michigan, there's a young man by the name of Khalil Abu Rayyan, who was 21 years old at the time. He was working at his dad's pizza shop. And, he was depressed, and he was online, got caught up talking to some girls. All he really wanted was to marry these girls, but, they tried to instigate him to talk about his support for ISIS. And, he got caught up in that, and he was sentenced to 5 years, which is actually a lot longer than the charges would call for. But I want to mention something called terrorism enhancement sentencing guidelines. So in a lot of these cases, even if there was no actual act of violence committed, even if these people were not even charged with acts of terrorism or even material support to terrorism, oftentimes they're charged with lesser charges because they're not able to actually get them on terrorism charges. But because they are related to these fake terrorism plots that are concocted by the FBI, they're given extremely long sentences because of something called the terrorism enhancement sentencing guidelines. So someone who would, under any other circumstances, get maybe a year in prison would get 5 because of this. Or someone who would get 10 would end up getting 20, again, because of these enhancement sentencing guidelines. So, it puts these vulnerable people behind prison for extremely long periods of time. It impacts their families, their communities. It really, it impacts our communities in ways that we don't even realize. So one thing I want to talk about is how these, the surveillance post 9/11, as we all know, particularly targets Muslim communities. And, so this is what we call racialized surveillance. And just as far back as 2011, and I'm going still there? Hello? Okay, I think I'm back.
You're back on. Your
I'm
connection had
sorry, I'm
lost.
not sure what happened. But yeah, just as far back as 2011, there was a series of FBI training material that was leaked to the public. And in this material, it reinforces this notion that Muslims, practicing mainstream Muslims, are likely to be terrorist sympathizers. And they, it asserts, they have like this chart where, the more devout you are, the more likely you are to be violent. And not only that, but the training material also indicates that our charitable giving is nothing more than, quote, funding mechanism for combat. So, the thing about post 9/11 surveillance, mass surveillance, entrapment, and the targeting of our communities is it criminalizes every aspect of our lives. It makes our mosques and our places of worship, our places of community, an unsafe space for us. It targets our leadership, it silences them, it weakens our institutions, and again, it targets our most vulnerable. So, I want to talk about ways that we can protect ourselves, but I also want to talk about, these are all examples of institutionalized Islamophobia. But what we need to be aware of is internalized Islamophobia. And what's happened in our community is that we've been asked for so long post 9/11 to apologize for acts of terrorism that, have nothing to do with our community, frankly. And so we have been demonized, and we're constantly trying to prove ourselves as, the good Muslims. And so in an effort to do so, unfortunately, our institutions, our masajid, our leadership have welcomed the FBI into our community spaces, have kind of almost bent over backwards in an effort to accommodate them and to prove to them that, we're on your side, we're not supportive, we don't support terrorism. But in doing so, we, again, have weakened our institutions, we have made our places of worship an unsafe space, and we are allowing them to target our most vulnerable. So with that said, what we need to be aware of is the FBI tactics that they use. I think parents need to be aware of who their children and their teens and young adults are talking to, who they're befriending. You need to know that, if you're online chatting with someone, you don't really know who's on the other side of that screen or that keyboard, right? So we just need to be cautious. We need to be vigilant. We need to protect our rights. And we need to know, back to the idea of internalized Islamophobia is that, the FBI has a history of lying, of fabricating evidence, of targeting dissidents or political activists. And so one thing that I've noticed is that when these, entrapment cases make the news, they're sensationalized, right? And, it's like, 4 people just plan to bomb some military compound or something, but we're not given the backstory that these 4 people are probably mentally ill, desperate, poor, and that this plot was actually fabricated by the FBI and they were entrapped, right? But our go-to as a community is to assume guilt. And what we need to know is that our criminal justice system does not work for the average person, especially does not work for a non-white male, right? I mean, the goal of a prosecutor is to get as many convictions as possible. The goal of these programs, like counterterrorism programs, is to get as many people in prison as possible. So it's not really about the truth, and it's not really about protecting us. In fact, our tax dollars are being used to lock up innocent people, and we need to be smarter than we are. So I'll leave it at that. I hope that was helpful. There's so much to cover, but these are my main points for today.
Thank you, Sister Mariam. And before we take any questions or comments, I really want to highlight um, a couple of things that were said, or maybe to crystallize a couple of things. Um, the first thing is that for our institutions, and be you an organizer, an activist, you are on the board of a charitable organization or an Islamic center, there is no reason to have a special relationship with the FBI. If we have a hate crime or something happens to our community, we know how to pick up the phone and call law enforcement. But when they say that they're coming to our community to better relations, well, the I is in FBI for a reason, that they are treating us like a suspect community to be investigated. The FBI just doesn't randomly say we want to have good relations with evangelical churches in the suburbs or with this particular other community of these other people who are Jewish or Christian or whatever. No, it's only done to us, and that's because they treat us like a suspect community. So these people are not our friends, and I know some of us in the community who are immigrants, especially in the Arab world, have to resist the notion that just by meeting with people, you think that's going to make you and your business or your congregation safe. That is simply not how it works in America. I know back in the quote unquote bilad, that if you have a good relationship with an official in the mukhabarat or something like that, maybe you think that you're going to keep yourself out of jail. No, there's people who've cooperated and had cozy relations with high government officials and still got indicted and still got smeared. And just look at the case of Dr. Samuel Arian. That's a prime example, right? If you want to go any further, just look up his case. He had a relationship with President Bush, for God's sake, and that didn't even help him. And he got deported, right? So if you question what I'm saying, then look at the case of Dr. Sami El Arian, right? That's number one. Number two is we have to be very careful about people who come in our community and online to make certain assertions, to try to excite us. Also, one of the tricks of the counterintelligence program was to destabilize the community and to make people within the community suspicious of each other, or there was false claims that were made about people, or people who were in leadership position were set up. This was part of the dirty tricks that was used under the counterintelligence program. So because someone makes a claim, that person may not even be the person that they say they are, right? Like this guy said he was Jabril, right? There are people who come amongst us. There's a guy, I forgot the so-called Muslim name he was going by, but there was a guy named Craig Montel in Southern California who was posing as a Muslim, right? And was spreading and saying all sorts of things. He later ended up outing himself because the FBI didn't pay him all his snitch wages. The FBI even gave this guy special permission for so-called special information gathering, which means that they gave him permission. He claimed that he slept with two sisters in the Muslim community to get information, right? So we can't just simply go off of everything that's said, especially when people are trying to cause confusion, fitna, making charges and hiding their hand, trying to incite young people to do things, uh, sending pictures, posting little things. This is what Craig Montel did and tried to incite some youth to go overseas to fight, showing pictures of drone strikes, right? There's informants that have gone in the community trying to get people to go to Somalia, Syria, Lebanon, right? So we have to be careful about those people who come in our midst. And if anyone is coming amongst us sharing things, um, or trying to get people to do something, to try to incite, then I would suggest that you tell the leadership of that organization and contact us as well. And we have means and ways about how to go about in handling this, right? So everything is not as it appears, is my point. And we have to be careful. People coming in our centers, coming amongst our young people, making claims and allegations online, trying to share certain things, because that might be an agent provocateur that is, uh, and maybe not even working for the FBI or Homeland Security. It could be an informant working for an organization or for another government. Right. We know of a case that was settled in court years back of when the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, was spying on the ADC, an Arab American civil rights organization, right? So even the people sitting amongst us could be working for a foreign state or working for a community or organization that sees the Muslim community as adversaries, right? So don't fall asleep, about the reality of what we're facing as a Muslim community. Um, if there are no other questions or comments, I don't see any comments that came in. There are certain resources that you can look at to look at more about Imam Luqman's case. There's a documentary that was made through Michigan State University called Death of an Imam that kind of goes through some of the things that we talked about. Also, let me invite you all to join us, God willing. We've been doing this now for 11 straight years since his janazah, in various forms. But the Ansar Collective, a group that I'm a part of, plus the family of Imam Luqman Abdullah, rahmatullahi ta'ala, will have a gathering at the Knollwood Cemetery in Canton um, at 10 a.m. We pretty much try to start on time. For by prayer we mean dua. By Quran recital we mean reciting Al Fatiha, Surah Yasin, and Surah Ikhlas 11 times. Then there will be some comments from the Abdullah of family. So it should take all of about uh, less than an hour. We hope an hour at the max. God willing, we invite you all in the community or those who are not part of the Muslim community to attend uh, this gathering of prayer and this gathering of healing for the family. Knollwood Cemetery is next to Masjid Bilal in Canton, Michigan. Uh, Hold on, we have a question. So, if one is a leader of a Muslim community in the West, what kind of practical advice do you have for them? Meaning how one should approach teaching their religion without compromising, but also by being vigilant at the same time. So, what I would say is that we have freedom of speech in the United States of America. We have freedom of speech. And as Muslims, we should obey the laws of the land that we live in. So, obviously, um, some of the very things that the FBI is trying to entrap us to, or have entrapped some of our unstable people, go against the teachings of Islam. Like, by the way, Sister Mariam mentioned the Newberg case. Like, let me put this into perspective, right? These young men who were convicted. One of them was a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. Another one was a crack addict. The other one was a new Muslim whose brother was dying and needed a liver transplant. And the agent provocateur by the name of Shahid Hussein, a man who's a Pakistani national who was wanted for murder in Pakistan, said, well, if you do this for me, I'll give you, I'll get the money for you to save your little brother's life who needs a liver transplant. This is the type of dirty, filthy tactics that the FBI has used, right? We're talking about someone who's an informant who's charged with something worse than the activities the people were doing prior, that then the FBI gives them a plot that they weren't even trying to hatch themselves, right? Like, this is the type of situation. So it's the moderate teachings of Islam that we have to teach and preach. And I would say this too, that now with freedom of speech comes consequences, right? Like, everything that we say and believe in may not be popular to the status quo in the dominant society, right? But I would say to you and anyone else that the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala weren't popular at their time either. Nuh alayhi salam was rejected by the status quo. As a matter of fact, in the Quran, the ayat of the Quran, that people made the charge that you have that Nuh had the so-called low lives following him. And um, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham and Nimrod or Nimrud, like Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam wasn't popular in Egypt. Moses, right? Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, wasn't popular in Palestine when the Romans were illegally occupying Palestine. Prophet Muhammad alayhi afdalus salam wasn't popular in Mecca when Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and Abu Sufyan and those people, when they were in Umayyah bin Khalaf, and these people were attacking the Sahaba and those people in Mecca, right? So, um, we should teach and preach our religion that's protected under the First Amendment with wisdom. At the same time, we shouldn't censure our bona fide, sincerely held religious beliefs out of fear of people not accepting us. Because guess what? Even when we try to water down our beliefs, it's to fit in, those same people still attack us and don't accept us anyway. So, like, even what's the use? Like, we end up selling our dignity and our souls at the same time. And this is the internalized Islamophobia that Sister Mariam was talking about. That's a big challenge that we have to get over as a community, where we feel that and that we think we're going to make ourselves safe and say, oh, the Sharia is bad, and let's invite the head of the FBI over for the masjid for lunch or for dinner, and let's invite some imams, some community leaders to sit back. Let's invite the FBI to give a Know Your Rights presentation about how to deal with the FBI in the masjid. Like, you can't make this stuff up. This is actually, all those things I've said have actually happened, right? And it's a sign of misunderstanding, and maybe even a reflection of low iman. It's a reflection of low iman, or it could be a reflection of low iman, but it's definitely a sign of misunderstanding about how the United States of America works. So that's my answer. Allah knows best. Do you have anything to add on, Sister Maudie?
No, that was perfect. Jazakallah khair.
Wayaki. I hope that answered your question. Says with some level of clarity, brother Iskandar. MashaAllah, I like the Ottoman. Calligraphy right there. Alhamdulillah. So if that is it, we've gone 3 minutes over our time. And I will close with this, that, in order for us to continue our work on your behalf and to stand for your rights, we need your support morally and financially. Even this Imam Luqman case, it cost us so much time and resources with this one particular case, but so many cases that we deal with now. And we are an organization that we are overwhelmingly funded by the grassroots of our community, right? We're not getting wayakum. Wafikum barakallah. Wafikum barakallah. We are overwhelmingly uh, funded by the grassroots Muslim community, right? And that's how we're able to keep our integrity as an organization. There are other civil rights organizations or other organizations that get funding from outside, and they're not able to say some of the things we say or file some of the suits that we file because they're handcuffed because of their funding sources, right? So, uh, or as they say, people don't want to bite the hand that feeds us. Well, we get our strength and support from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then from the believers. المؤمنون مؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمر بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر ويقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة ونطيع الله ورسوله أولئك سيرحمهم الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. The believing men and believing women protect each other. They have each other's backs. They enjoin good and the justice. They forbid the evil and the injustice. They establish their prayer. They institute and they pay the charity, right? And they obey Allah and His Messenger, alayhi afdalu salam, in the other matters. And these are the people who will be successful, as Allah Azza wa Jal says, right? So we we appreciate your dua, and we also appreciate that you give some of your sadaqah to Care Michigan, and we also have a special zakat fund for zakatul mal for some of our clients that come who aren't able to, who are in financial crisis, who are unable to pay any money for even filings or copies of things like that. That we have special money set aside in our zakat fund, right? And so we are zakat mal eligible, and we are very scrupulous about this, how we put it aside and earmark it. We're not saying, oh, fi sabilillah, so we're taking zakat money just to spend it on anything, like how some Muslim organizations say they're zakat eligible and actually they misuse zakat money. So we are scrupulous about that in following the Sharia of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. So please donate to us. You can go online. If you want to wait even until Maghrib time, Laylatul Jum'ah, the night of Jum'ah is the best night of the week to give charity. It's the best night of the week to make asata ala nabi. This is the month of Rabiul Awal. So make a make a dua for Care Michigan, for all of our board members, our staffers. Increase us. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in rizq tayyib, and also give a donation to Care Michigan, inshallah. And I sent a message to one of the attorneys dealing with the Imam Jamil Al-Amin case, but we want to have something soon. As we talked about Imam Luqman's connection to Imam Jamil, we need to do something and raise awareness about the case of Imam Jamil Al-Amin. Inshallah, we will try to do that soon. I'll coordinate with one of the attorneys, as well as, inshallah, Brother Khairi. Inshallah, we can get a hold of him, Imam Jamil's son, and we can do something talking about Imam Jamil Al-Amin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our community. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. May He bless all of our families. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give healing to all of our ill. May Allah Azza wa Jal lift this wabah of corona from the earth. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitate us visitation to His holy house in Mecca and to the house of His beloved Al Habib Al Mustafa in Medina sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the kaid, from the schemes of every kaid, of every person who is a schemer. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from spies and from informants and from agent provocateurs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the soul of Imam Luqman Abdullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate him and make him be amongst the ranks of the shuhada, amongst the ranks of Hamza radiallahu an, and of the ranks of Sumayya radiallahu anha, in the ranks of Yasir radiallahu an, in the ranks of Sayyidina Hussein radiallahu an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the family of Imam Luqman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove any huzn, any grief that's in their hearts on this day today, Ya Rabbil Alameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the intercession of Al Habib Al Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam on the day of resurrection, and have us be in his company abadan, abadan, forever and forever and forever. Al Fatiha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.